From the journalists at the Tennessee Firefly, this is On the Fly, your deep dive into the education issues you need to know about. I'm Firefly Managing Editor Sky Arnold, sitting right next to Memphis City Council member and Tennessee Gubernatorial candidate Jerri Green. Jerri, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us today.
So I'd like to start talking a little bit about your education vision. As a Democrat running in Tennessee, we all know that we have a Republican supermajority. If elected, you would have to work with that Republican supermajority. And as you've been campaigning, you've said that Kentucky might be something to look to in terms of how their Democratic governor works with the Republican legislature. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that. What did you mean by that when you've said that, and what are some issues that maybe you feel like you could work with Republicans on?
I don't think there's any issue that's off bounds. In my hometown, I have worked on issues as controversial as abortion and guns with Republicans and found consensus. My state senator, Brent Taylor, and I, we share a district. It overlaps. We're often working on blight or vandalism or homelessness together. So I think there's lots of spaces and places. I'm sure people think about jobs or infrastructure, roads, those sort of places. But I do think the issue of education is one in particular that we do have a lot of common ground on, especially as it relates to vouchers and seeing what I've seen across the state and seeing what I've seen from the past votes just this past week, that it's not a solid issue on either side of the aisle, especially in these small towns where there's just one school and there is no other choice, and they don't like to see money being taken out of their public schools. So I really think there's no area that's off limits.
Since you brought up the Education Freedom Scholarship, sometimes called vouchers, as governor, would you work to remove that program, and what would you do with the children who are currently utilizing that program?
Well, first let's start with the current people who are currently using it. The Tennessee Comptroller's report showed that most of those people were already in private schools and could already afford those private schools. I would, in that program, I'd put that money fully back into public school. I mean, I just think about, like, if you have a house that needs a new roof, right? And you know it needs a new roof and that would make the house better. You don't take money away from it and put it into your neighbor's pool. You would put it into fixing that roof up. In fact, you might add more money to secure that house. So I think that's where our dollars should be. I say this as a mom of 3, and I have all of them in school. 2 of them are in public school, 1's in private school. I understand that there are sacrifices that have to be made to put your kids in private school, but I don't believe in welfare for the wealthy. I'm sure it's a very popular program because I too would like a $7,000 coupon to my daughter's school, but I don't expect anyone else to pay for that. In the meantime, our public schools are really where the future of the citizenship of Tennessee lies, especially in these rural areas. That's the lifeblood. And these are schools that the grandparents went to, the parents went to, now the kids are going to, and we've really got to make sure that we're putting the right investment there. So I would put that money directly back into public schools.
One of the first decisions any new governor makes, who fills out his or her cabinet. Picking an education commissioner is a big part of that. Again, early in the campaign, obviously, but any specific leadership qualities you'd be looking for that position if elected?
Absolutely. I think we need somebody with actual experience. So, for example, I'm the head public defender in Shelby County right now. But in the past, I was a practicing public defender. I was in the courtrooms, and I think that serves me better as a leader. So I would very specifically be looking for someone who had actual classroom experience to be filling out that role.
Stanford University recently published a study that we've talked a lot about on the Tennessee Firefly, showing that public charter schools are doing a good job in Tennessee. Some Democrats don't support public charter schools. Would love to get your thoughts on, A, if you support them, and B, if you do, would you like to see more of them in some suburban areas?
Well, again, you know, I take each year with each of my kids one kid, 1 year at a time to figure out where the best place is for them. So I understand that public charter schools are needed in some places. I appreciate that they are then held to the same standards as our public schools, and I think that's really important that we continue to do things like that. But I do think it is secondary to fully funding our public schools. That's really where we need to start. That's where we need to focus. Again, you know, we're talking about some major cities that do have a lot of options, but when I travel the state, I can say, what's the high school here? And everybody will say one name, and I'll say, what's the mascot? And they'll be like, it's the Dragons. And I'll be like, what are your colors? And they'll be like, purple and gold. There's only one choice there. So we've got to make sure we build up those spaces and places first before we turn to something like public charter schools.
When it comes to public schools, you mentioned quite a few innovative programs that some schools have. For parents who maybe don't live in that zoned area to send their kids to that school, maybe they live just outside of that, but they're interested in sending their kids to one of those schools that has that program. As it is currently, there are some barriers that parents face. We typically call that open enrollment. Sometimes they have to pay tuition. Sometimes there are districts just aren't real friendly to open enrollment. There was a proposal this year to sort of make it easier for parents to move their children into schools across district lines. Do you support that, and do you support removing some of the barriers for parents who want to enroll their kids in public schools we're talking about?
Well, so in Memphis, I went to, we called it an optional program, right, at White Station High School, and my son is now at White Station High School because of the optional program. And while there are some hoops that you have to jump through, and in my day, I think my mom had to pay $100 in tuition per year, something really crazy. And I cheered with a girl who actually was from Mississippi, that I think her parents had to pay $200 or something. There's nothing now that we have to do that. But I do think that if you have a specialized program, like if your kid is, as I just said, really interested in airplane mechanics, and this is a school, we should make that available for other public schools so there is some choice. Now, at the same time, I don't want us to get to a point where we leave a public school without any population, without any growth. Like, we should make every public school be so desirable that's why you move to that area, right? That's why you want to go there. So we need to be investing in all of them to make them feel like that. But if you have a kid who's really into the performing arts or playing the violin, and this is the best musical school, public school in the city, yes, we should be able to have some way for parents to take advantage of that.
There's also been a little bit of discussion about teacher evaluations. Here in Tennessee, teachers are evaluated every year. There have been some discussions about maybe reducing that for teachers who've been around a while. Wanted your thoughts on that one as well. Do you support that? Do you support reducing the frequency of evaluations for teachers?
Well, I think we all need to be constantly evaluating what we're doing and how we're doing. That's the only way that you can find out if you are backsliding or if you're missing something. So while I am not for more evaluations on teachers, and I want the evaluations to be productive, right? Not just doing the evaluation for the evaluation's sake. I want people to understand that we're doing this because we're trying to improve the outcomes for our students. It's not a punishment on teachers. It's just an evaluation. And look, there's new things coming out in education all the time. And so if we can find spaces and places where they can continue to innovate, even if they've been there for years, especially if they've been there for years, right? We have all of that value and learning that those teachers bring. If we can add in new techniques and things that are being learned, we need to do that. And so some of the evaluation process needs to be, are you incorporating this? Are you taking back the new things that we're bringing in?
Your platform has included multiple proposals for investment in special education. I would love to give you a chance to talk a little bit about what those proposals are and why that's needed as well.
Well, so my youngest is autistic, level 3. He's verbal. He has a lot of social issues. He's in a public school inside a special class that is designed for kids like him who can't handle a loud music class or who think their uniform's itchy and that can set them off. But he's brilliant. It's a really hard balance, but I say all that to say this is really personal to me. So not only do I have kids in public schools, but I have special needs kids. And I know that without those programs, he wouldn't be in school. You know, private schools will say, we try to be accommodating, but we don't make accommodations, right? So this is our pathway for him to have a good education and to learn those skills that he needs. So I have specifically put into my plan and my platform things around special education, mostly because as a special ed parent, I'm terrified by what I see happening at the national level. What the rhetoric I see coming out of Marsha Blackburn about ending the Department of Education. That would mean ending the IDEA and the protections my kid gets in his IEP, right? The special class that he's in right now that has a teacher and 2 support staff for a class of 10. We would never have that if we didn't have what the IDEA provides these kids. So I want to make sure that we are stepping up as a state government to make sure that we are encouraging teachers in particular to go into special education. And we have set up in our platform ways to incentivize teachers to go ahead and get those certifications regardless of what happens on the state level. And I just, as a parent, would say to other special needs parents that whatever we have to do, no matter what happens on the national level, we're going to keep supporting those kids because they are just as valuable as everyone else.
Jerri Green, thank you very much for your time. We really
course.
appreciate you coming and being on the Fly.
Thank you.
That'll do it for this edition of On the Fly. Catch us where you get your podcasts. I'm Sky On.